Good morning, guys. This is a rundown on Siacoin, and let's just do a top down. I don't have the weekly chart comes up strange here with this tail. It's a bad print, some bad data, and same thing on the monthly. So the highest time frame, well, maybe we can go to 3 days. Yeah, same thing. Highest time frame we go out here is a day. Now this is pretty typical of a lot of these altcoins when they do move into a bear market on the daily chart, a lot of this price action looks pretty similar. And this is versus BTC. I don't have a chart versus the dollar, unfortunately. So we do have to take into account that if you have a strong rally in Bitcoin, it's obviously going to make this chart and this coin appear like it's going down when relative to the dollar. It may not be. It's just that obviously you're having a rise in Bitcoin. So um but we certainly care about, if you're trying to decide where you want to have more capital, at times more in BTC or alts, then obviously these charts matter. But this is a pretty good picture of what a bear market looks like in our model. When you break the bands here, the bands are these green lines, and when they roll over, I call that negatively sloping. And it's just a good visual of a simple way to kind of identify the flow or the wave formation. And so technically, to define a trend, you look at the higher lows and the higher highs and the higher lows in an uptrend, and then you want to identify the correct lower lows and lower highs within the context of a downtrend. The question is, well, which higher lows matter? We care about the higher lows at or near the bands. So initially out of the gate here, there's some higher lows here. And then right here, you have a bottoming tail. I don't know if you guys can see that right at the bottom of the bands. And so not being able to hold this after a higher high here, that was a big change. That's a big change right there. So there was a lot of risk to the downside. And from there, you can just see price drop to lower low. And after you go from here, a drop to this low, very difficult to route. On the next move up is going to be very difficult to retrace, at least more than, anything above halfway after this big of a drop is very difficult. The market only could bounce to here, and then you got another subsequent lower high, and it's just been lower highs ever since. All right, but you'll see a lot of times when this pattern like this forms, and then you do start to regain the bands, a lot of times on these alts versus BTC or even versus the dollar, you'll get a nice explosive move. So I think I've talked about this before actually on this coin, is that we don't want to be sitting in pockets where you're wasting your capital and you're losing money trying to bottom pick. Buying lower lows is just very difficult, because even if you buy a lower low well, look how shallow this rally is before you drop to a new low. So it doesn't really pay to be constantly buying lower lows. That's not how you want to trade. There's a time to go contrarian at the bottom of the cycle when you can nibble, but you can never commit a lot of capital when you're on what we call a phase one situation where you're just making lower lows. You want to be waiting for what we call the right hand side of the cycle, which is over here. So this is essentially one big cycle here. And so it's not, the key is to try to catch it over here on the right hand side of the chart. And so there's certain things you can do to look at that. But the first sign, I mean, these are all lower lows here, lower lows. At least here, you finally stopped making lower lows and you formed this little base. And then once you clear that base, that's a better time to go long. So we didn't catch this move up. I did look for some follow through after this strong move here. We retraced and we started nibbling a little bit here. But again, the same thing. Market couldn't hold the bands. I stopped out on that position right there. And ever since, we've just been soft. So a lot of that has to do with the Bitcoin strength lately, um, the last couple of weeks here. But at the same time, I mean, there's no reason to really be long longer term unless we can get back above the bands here. So that's what I see on the daily. When we look at the 4 hour or hourly, 4 hour following our pie line is going to kind of get you that same spot where you break the bands. So you can see I'm cutting risk right here. And then it's just been in, really, I mean, the intermediate term went in intermediate term bear market all the way back here. You can have different time frames. You have a long-term bull market that didn't break till right here, but the intermediate term will always roll over first. That kind of happened right in here. And just lower highs, lower highs, lower highs, lower lows. Where does it stop? You don't really know. Obviously, anything can happen, but you just let price prove itself. I mean, I don't, again, this is something I would continue to be playing on the bearish side from a timing and price perspective. Hourly is just going to show you the same thing. Nothing but a bear market here on the hourly chart. So again, we don't want to try to be buying lower lows. You waste your time, you waste your capital, you lose money. It's tough to work a position. I mean, can you nibble here at the 200? Sure, but you got to start making some higher highs on the intermediate term before you're going to get any kind of momentum to put any kind of real capital behind this. So I guess I would watch that 200 on the downside. One indicator isn't a reason to go all in long. It's just one little indicator on a chart. You need to consider time, the cycles, momentum, multiple time frames. You know, when you're in an intermediate term downtrend, there's no sense in getting aggressive in one or two lots. These are, if you want to nibble, fine, but you do it over 5 to maybe even 10 entries. Very small entries. I mean, that's the way you kind of build into a position. The contrarian is several entries. So maybe you take a small position here if you really like the coin. I'm just gonna let this one prove itself before I give it any of my capital.